So handing this off to Anna, how did Yoda get his first lead?
The sales force was with him. I like a good dad joke. Okay, so segueing though off of dad jokes and into sort of a reality or a pulse check. When we decided to do this webinar, of course, coronavirus was not at the top of everybody's list, and now it truly is at the top of everybody's list. So I'm going to say something that may have occurred to some of you and may sound a little controversial to others of you. But I have 3 takeaways for you today. And the first one is that coronavirus is an opportunity. And I know that a lot of people are suffering. I've also had to overcome challenges related to coronavirus. And so it's not that coronavirus is an opportunity that's a pleasure for everyone, but still it is an opportunity. And so we'll talk about that and how you can turn this very difficult situation, really no matter how it turns out for you and your loved ones, into a type of an opportunity. And then also I wanted to talk about navigating crisis and how navigating crisis is kind of a combination of art, science, and poetry. So we hope to touch on all 3 of those things today. And then finally, my third point is 3 points. And it's the 3 pillars of marketing, which are always true, but feel even more urgent right now. And those are really brand, strategy, and content. And so we'll be diving into those too. So what we will also be covering, just in a baseline way, is, I can't, I need a little help moving the slide maybe. Oh, here we go. Great, so I'll be doing a little introduction, and then we'll be talking about branding, which is the core of this presentation, and then also how it affects your websites, your marketing collateral, and then apply these concepts to specific tactics that you'll use within digital marketing. And then we'll also be talking a little bit about analytics and give you some opportunities to ask questions. So our first thing that we'd like to do is talk about how are you? And the way that a lot of people are visualizing how they are right now is sort of like this. Is your business bleeding? Is it slipping? Is it stable? Or is it growing? And so I think that Kelly's going to put out a poll for us, and we can get a little take on how everybody's doing. Now, I know bleeding sounds scary, but there are a lot of people who've been laid off or who have found themselves downsized or whose families are in trouble in one way or another. So we're running the gamut from people who are really having a difficult time professionally with this to people who may have found opportunities. For example, one of our clients is a birth center, and people are not wanting to give birth in hospitals right now. And so effectively, their business has taken off to the point where they had to hire and make decisions about how to quickly expand. And of course, they're in the healthcare field. So it was a challenge, just as it was an opportunity, but definitely their calendar is full for the foreseeable future. Great, Kelly, are people voting? I'm not seeing the results, so maybe you could tell us. Oh, great. People are slipping. But fortunately, not many of you are bleeding, so that's fantastic. Okay, great. So there is an answer to what to do, or there are some solution points to think about, especially if you feel like your business is slipping or bleeding. So the first point is client retention. And the second one is gaining the attention of new potentials, even during difficult times. And then finally, how do you convert them? And a conversion may be as simple as getting them to sign up for your email list so that you can reach out to them and have a new client base, hashtag when this is over, which we know won't be for quite some time one way or another. So a conversion could be business for the future and you need to hold on until you can get to that point. Or it could be bringing on a new client today. And we're going to talk about how retention, attention, and conversion look a little different during a challenging time like we're facing right now. But the reason that I bring this up too is so that you don't have to think of it in terms of being completely passive if you're having difficulty with your business, but really actively looking at these different parts of how you build your business and saying, okay, retention. People are saying that they want to take a break right now from services. Now's not the time for them to do their estate plan, whatever the case may be. So actually, how can you convince them that today and right now is the time to do that? How can you keep people on board? If your clients are having trouble with their own finances, what are creative ways to help them pay you so that you can pay your team and pay yourself? So I'm just encouraging everybody to look at this question of branding and marketing in terms of solution points. Okay, so actually we'd like to do another poll before I get going, which is really about how comfortable you are with marketing. And the reason that I'm asking that is because I want to tailor my talk to kind of the biggest number of you. Of course, I'll try to give a range of answers for everything that we're talking about. So let's see, is it too soon for results? Okay, so most of you are in the beginner to intermediate range, and a few of you feel like you're advanced, and some of you have no experience at all. So I will try to focus our efforts in those directions. Okay. So branding elements are about your audience. And so each of you is in a different part of the legal profession. And so each of you will have your own specific audience. And then from there, most of you aren't selling products, but from there, you're going to be tailoring your service to that specific audience. And so that is already part of branding. Who your audience is and what you're offering them are the first two important parts of branding. And not everybody thinks of their audience as part of their brand, but your brand lives in your audience. And so it's how people perceive you and your work. The part about your brand that gets really creative is how you present yourself visually and also what your message is. And then, of course, during a time like now, you'll need to pivot your messaging to directly identify what people's needs are right now as they're in a type of crisis mode. Okay, so before we get to the next slide, does anybody have any questions just about branding in general that I can answer?
No questions right now.
Okay, great. So once you've kind of delved into really thinking through who your audience is and what their specific pain points are, and also considered how you can pivot right now, and then you're thinking in terms of the kind of law that you're practicing. So for example, if you're in corporate law, you may want to have a more conservative or traditional look and feel. If you're doing something like tenant law, you may want to have a more contemporary, feel that might appeal to younger audiences. If you're doing estate planning, that may be an older audience, but you want to have a warmer and friendly feel. So those are all things to consider about your brand. But once you have solidified your brand, then the next piece is to really look at what your objectives and key results are. So this is a business question. And so everything that your brand does and is trying to accomplish should be focused also around your company, your department, or your individual goals. And so objectives and key results are considered lead measures. So that this is what you are trying to accomplish, and this is the avenue that you will take to get there. And then your key performance indicators will flow from your OKRs and are lag measures. So they're more like what did happen. And the reason that I bring this up now is because this is the foundation for your strategy, what you're trying to accomplish, and then at the end of the day, what will success look like? Does anybody have questions about this?
We do have a question, but it's on trademark. This person wants to know if it's difficult and or expensive to trademark a logo.
No, I mean, it's relatively easy and relatively inexpensive. But I think that also there are probably, there could be somebody in the audience who actually is a trademark lawyer. So I've found trademarking to be a relatively straightforward process for the kinds of work that we've done with our clients. And it's involved doing a search and making sure that your logo is original. And then also using it regularly to establish that this is truly your logo over time. But if anybody in the audience knows more about it or has any resources, that would be fantastic. Okay. I didn't expect you guys to ask me legal questions, but luckily I had a little bit of an answer. Okay, so where your brand lives initially online is your website. And so there are a few important elements to your website. And the first, so one thing you need to understand about your website is that it is your home online. And so everything about your website reflects your brand. And this is where you can showcase your typefaces, your logo, the kinds of colors that you use. This is where you'll write out your brand message. And this is where you'll be directing traffic so that people can get to know you online and hopefully convert to paying clients. So there are a few things that are really important that also reflect your brand. So the first one is user experience. And so if you imagine going into, like, say, your office setting, and if your office is messy or difficult to navigate, if people can't find, where the restroom is, this kind of thing, that says something about you and your offerings. And it's similar with a website. So you want clear navigation, you want a clear journey for the person when they're on the website. You want them to be able to find the information they're looking for quickly. And then, of course, part of the experience is making the website attractive. So another important part about your website is accessibility, and that is part of Google's algorithm for making you more visible in search. And so your website should be accessible to handicapped people or disabled people. And something that's important to consider about that too is that about 20% of the adult population has a disability. Not all of those disabilities, of course, affect their ability to use a website, but you are turning away potential clients if they can't use your website. And it is Google's goal to make websites available to everyone. So then the next part is that your website can have a lead capture strategy, which will allow you to build your subscriber base, keep yourself top of mind, and encourage brand loyalty. So lead capture often takes the form of a download or a complimentary digital strategy session or a complimentary consultation if you're in the law field. And then also your website is the place that your email automations and different live. And so once somebody you've captured them as a lead and you've captured your their email, you're able to send out follow-up materials and tell them about your business. And this can be done very inexpensively, but each part of it is an opportunity for you to showcase your brand. And so across your website and any materials that come from your website, it's important to think about coherent and consistent brand look and feel, which will make you more recognizable over time, and which will also provide a better experience to people interacting with your brand. A final thing I like to say about websites before I open it up to questions is that your website is a resaleable asset. And especially if you rank for competitive keyword terms, and we're going to talk more about search engine optimization later, and I'll give you an opportunity to ask questions about that. But effectively, if you have a domain name that ranks well for especially competitive legal terms, that is a resaleable asset. And so there's every reason to make sure that your website is attractive, user-friendly, accessible, provides you with a strategy to capture leads, nurtures the people who already are your leads, and is healthy in terms of being error-free in the back end, so that it can be a true asset and part of your marketing strategy. Okay, before we get to marketing collateral, does anybody have questions about websites?
If you have a question, you can use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. But right now, we don't have any questions, Anna.
Okay, so now let's talk about marketing collateral. So these are all different kinds of collateral. So this is where your brand lives when it is not on your website. Some of these things also live on your website, but people are looking for media and interaction with your brand in a whole variety of ways. And so some of these are very obvious, but some of them are a little less obvious. So for example, you can send people a digital postcard that has your brand and also gives them updated information about what you may be up to. And especially now, people are looking for different kinds of experiences, kind of like the one that's being offered right now. So because you aren't able to meet with people as often, you may be able to share their expertise. You could send them a digital postcard and invite them to this kind of event, but also make the postcard shareable so they can share it on their social media. But the reason that I put out all of these different kinds of places that your brand lives is that it's important to think in terms of consistency and coherence across all of your different assets, from a sign that you might have because you have a choice between branding it to you and picking up something generic, to your e-signature and your email, to proposals you send out, to pitch decks. All of this should reflect the message and the look and feel that you want, that will support your OKRs, your objectives for your business. Does anybody have any question about collateral? It doesn't look like it. Okay. All right, so next we're going to talk about tactics. And the main tactics of digital marketing are search, social, email, advertising, and content creation, which actually supports the first four. So we have a chart here, and I'm going to let you ask questions between each one of the tactics. So in case you want to know a little bit more. So the first tactic, and this kind of comes after you have decided on your business objectives, decided how you can be more specific to this current situation, and then also made sure that your website is attractive and that it's well set up for Google search and for user experience, then it's time to start to drive traffic to your website. And one of the most powerful digital marketing tool or tactics that we have is search engine optimization, or SEO, depending on how you like to think of it. But search happens when anybody has a pain point that they're looking for a solution to on the web. And here I like to pause and talk about the buyer's journey, because when I have a problem, especially if it's something a little bit outside of my everyday, such as a legal question, I sometimes don't even know how to ask the question. And so this is where you will want to have some search terms that you're going for be at the very top of the funnel. And the funnel, if you're not familiar with that term, is from the huge, vast universe of people who are brand unaware of what you have to offer. So that's the whole world. And then you want to kind of draw people in towards your website or towards you specifically. So the very top of the funnel is when people become brand aware. And so they may be asking general questions, trying to narrow down on kind of what their needs are. So let's just pretend that you're like a property rights lawyer, and somebody has a question about an easement for their driveway because they share a driveway with another neighbor. So they might first search something like sharing a driveway with a neighbor, which isn't exactly a legal term. But they may get to a blog post that you've written that talks about that, and then they learn about the word easement. And of course, some of you may be chuckling if I'm using these terms slightly inappropriately, but you get the idea, because I may be just a standard user who's looking for help with a legal problem. And so it's up to you when you're creating content for users to provide some general content that can get them to your website, and then more specific content as they're really understanding more about their problem and how to ask it. So easement for a shared driveway, that may be a question that somebody has as they've refined what they're looking for. And then if they've heard of you and they know about you, then a direct search, which is the bottom of the funnel, is something more along the lines of either typing in your name, or a step before that is Marin property lawyer. So this is where, as an attorney, you'll want to make sure that you have content that is at all parts of the funnel. And the function of search is to build awareness for your specific brand, and then also generate traffic towards your website. And there are two kinds of search. There's organic, which is built on content and backlinking, which I can give you more information about, and paid, which is pay per click. So a good mix can often be to start with paid search, and then as your organic search builds, that is a less expensive and more durable way with higher conversion rates for you to find people, get people to find you via Google. Okay, so do people have questions about search?
Yes, we have a few questions actually. How can one track who visits the website?
How can they track what?
How can they track visitors, and how can they track who visits the website?
They do that through Google Analytics, and so that involves putting a little piece of code onto your website header, and then your website is connected to Google Analytics and also another piece of software called Google Search Console. And so from there, you'll be able to get a lot of information about where your web traffic is coming from.
Next question is, can you recommend an entity for website construction? And what should the designer be able to produce?
So we mostly use WordPress websites, and that's an open source software that is also, there are many, many people who are able to work on WordPress sites. And so it's not quite an industry standard, but about 70% of top performing websites are built in WordPress, and they give you a lot of flexibility for e-commerce and for modifying your site so that it's findable by Google and indexable by Google. So that answers, I think, the first part of your question. And then in terms of design expectations, there's just a huge range. And so definitely you're going to want to see work samples. And then also, I think, get information about their project flow and how you can be expected to be walked through the project. And then generally speaking, pricing can be different if you need content produced for you. And just as a little aside, content is usually almost the hardest part of getting a good website together. And especially if you feel like your information needs to be very specifically legal. Usually clients are the ones who hold the process back. And so as part of your preparation for a website, I would definitely say get your content organized. I spent a lot of time on that. What are some other questions?
What type of content is suitable for an attorney's Facebook page or, or any other social media platform?
So I think that it's focused on the channel to some degree. So different channels, people have different goals when they're there. So like on your Facebook page, you can definitely share your latest blog posts, and you can share any kind of achievements or business updates that you'd like to share. And it's not limited to this, but in terms of Facebook, you're going to want to think that Facebook is really a place that people go to get entertained or to have their emotional needs met. And so Facebook is a great place to, post tasteful lawyer jokes, or, maybe even the cat video lawyer tie-in, like make people laugh or tell them interesting stories. Case studies are a great thing to share on Facebook. And then it's also a great place to get a little more personal. So maybe share if your child has had a graduation or, something like that. That's just Facebook, and that's just one example. And I'm not sure if I totally answered that question, but the truth is that most content types are appropriate for lawyers, but they will need to think about who their audience is again, and this is why that's such a fundamental part of brand, what that person is looking for, and then in the case of social media, what are they generally doing on that platform, and then how can you tie it in to what your offerings are and who you are as a business. Okay, are there more questions about search?
We have a few other questions here. Do you recommend linking directly to a blog post or having a separate landing page?
Okay, so first of all, in order for your blog to quote unquote count towards your search engine optimization for your website, it definitely needs to be under the same domain. So it'd be like lawyer.com/blog. And so I would never recommend, and all of your landing pages should also be on your same domain. Unless you're a very large entity, for the most part, you should have one website with all of your marketing efforts under one domain.
Great. And another question is, this person's website isn't showing up in Google search yet. How can they fix that?
So there could be a variety of reasons for that. They might want to look at structural issues in the website. There are things called robot text files that can hide your website from indexing. And so if the developer accidentally put the settings on your site incorrect, that could be holding you back. Or if it's a very brand new site and you haven't indexed it yet, that could be another issue. So there are a few reasons that that could happen. So that's one that you should probably check with an expert on. I'm happy for you to check with me, but it's a little hard to say without looking at the specific website.
Thank you, Anna. And one last question before we move on. What is your opinion about using Wix to build your website?
So Wix has limitations with search engine optimization, and it's because it's built in JavaScript, and Google doesn't really index JavaScript per se. So then when you're trying to work on your search engine optimization, it's harder to get your site properly analyzed in most search engine optimization tools. And it's also harder to, so then it's harder to evaluate all kinds of technical components around that. So we usually don't recommend Wix. Also, you don't own your content when you have a Wix website. So it's a proprietary site, it's not open source. And so that website is owned by Wix and you're effectively kind of leasing it. Whereas when you have a WordPress site, you own it. And so to me, it's also a better investment to have a WordPress.
Anna, what do you mean when you say index your website?
That means that Google's bots or crawlers, if you're familiar with one of those words, can locate your website and can then put it into Google's database.
And how hard would it be to migrate your site from Wix to WordPress?
It would not be a day's work. It would be more than a day's work. So basically you would have to build a WordPress site and then move all of your content onto the WordPress site. And of course, by moving it on there, you need to figure out which features you need on the site, which of course you could look at the Wix site, but nevertheless, you're building an entire website. So it's not a no-brainer.
Thanks, Anna.
Okay, so let's talk about social media. So the basic function of social media is to create brand awareness, to extend the reach of your brand, to drive traffic to your website. It can also be a venue for you to perform competitive research or just check out what other lawyers in your field are doing, and then also to keep you top of mind. So even if people don't click on something that you put on social media, they may see you in the feed and then they may say, oh, right, you know, I was planning to get my healthcare directive set up, you know, something like that. And social also comes in organic and paid forms. So Facebook recently, or a few years ago, changed their algorithm so that it's very, very hard for you to get any visibility for your Facebook page without paying for advertising. Luckily, it's low cost. Fortunate that advertising can be very targeted, but social media does have the lowest return on investment of all of the digital marketing strategies, and the sales cycle is quite long for it. So best to think of social media as a way to engage, a way to keep you top of mind, awareness, and less of a tactic to specifically drive sales or immediately get new clients. Do people have questions about social media?
I'm not seeing any right now.
Okie dokie, we'll move right on to email. So email actually has the highest return on investment of any of the digital marketing strategies. And I know that comes as a surprise to a lot of people, because when I say that it has the highest return on investment, they're thinking, oh, I hate all the email that I get. And I hate it when people send spammy emails. But the truth about email is that it's not algorithmically based like all of the rest of the tactics are. So that means that if I send you an email, you're likely to receive it it's almost one-to-one, unless you have a quote unquote dirty list. So email not only gets to your intended audience, but that audience gave you their email or you've had an interaction with them, so they already have brand awareness. And so email helps you stay top of mind. It also helps with loyalty, because you can keep people looped in by giving them information. Up until now, and I think things are probably changing almost before our very eyes, I don't think the legal profession has been one where there can be special offers or very many kind of out of the box ways to present your services. But during this time, especially if you find yourself in the bleeding category, it might be a time to think in terms of how can you offer somebody something a little different, or can there be group offerings online, or can there be a way to support people that's a little different than how you've done it before. And email is a perfect way to communicate that to your audience, to remind them that you're referral based, all of those kinds of things that you would do with people who are closer to you. So email comes in a few forms, but one of them is, say, a monthly newsletter. And then another one is the drip campaign or email automation that you would do subsequent to the lead capture strategy that we talked about earlier. So if somebody signs up for your newsletter, then they get an automatic series of information, and that could be videos, or it could be infographics, it could be blog posts, it could be, service descriptions, it could be case studies, the things that you think are most likely to engage your audience. And then there should be, though, an automatic thank you note that's generated when people sign up for your newsletter. And then there are also re-engagement emails. So if somebody hasn't opened your newsletter in a long time, then you may do a re-engagement campaign to get them back on board, and let them know that your content is better than ever. Oh, and that's what I would like to say too about email is that people don't like boring emails. They don't like spammy emails, but they really do like emails that actually deliver them useful content, and content that is addressing their specific concerns. So right now, for example, tons of people are sending out emails about COVID-19 resources and stuff like that, to the point where a lot of people that I've been talking about feel overwhelmed by it. So is there something else that you could send out? Maybe not that typical kind of offering, or maybe a link to it on your website, like, yes, we have a COVID-19 resource page, but really tapping into your audience and their needs. Is there something special that you could offer them now that would get them re-engaged, or just in general make them feel happy that they opened your email? Do people have questions about email marketing?
Do you have any recommendations on email tools like MailChimp or?
MailChimp is what we use for the most part, and we also have clients that use a variety of email service providers. But I like the interface on MailChimp. I like how simple it is to do split testing for subject lines. And MailChimp has also kind of expanded their service offerings a lot too, to be more full service. So, and it's also relatively low cost. So that is one I recommend.
Another question is, wouldn't email be considered solicitation?
Well, this is why you should have a double opt-in process. And so I think solicitation might be a very specific kind of legal term that I might not be able to directly answer right now, posed as such. But basically, there are a lot of laws around email and how to share your emails properly, and the foundation of it is a double opt-in. Hopefully that gets to the answer a little bit. Are there other questions about email?
Not at this time. Thanks, Anna.
Okay, great. So let's talk about advertising. So law in terms of digital marketing is a pretty competitive area, and especially for certain types of law. For example, personal injury, the keywords that are associated with it are very expensive. And so advertising generally should be part of your digital marketing mix as an attorney, but it can also be expensive. It is very good, though, at generating awareness, expanding your reach, and generating traffic to landing pages on your website. And there are 3 basic types of advertising. One of them is search, which is pay-per-click. Another one is social. And that one, you can use videos and images and get creative. And then there's another type of advertising called programmatic advertising. And that one's based on devices, so that if people go to certain locations, then you can deliver ads to them. And that is specifically very good for if you know that your audience is going to be in a specific location. So it might be really great if you were going to a certain kind of trade show, or I can give you an example too from our birth center. So we could have a programmatic search located in local playgrounds, which is where a lot of moms and parents hang out. And then after they had visited the playground, an ad would be served to them. So programmatic advertising is not for everyone, but it can have some really powerful use cases. Does anybody have questions about advertising?
Not advertising, but back to email. Can you clarify what double opt-in means?
So that means that the person opts in on your website, and then they receive an email and they have to confirm that they want to be on your website. And then after that, once they've confirmed it, they should get a thank you. And that thank you can either give them links back to your website or remind them of whatever your offer is, or even just say something funny or interesting or give them a fact about the law. But somehow, again, this is another opportunity for you to share what your brand look and feel is and what your messaging is, as opposed to just kind of one of those generic thank you responses.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah. So then now let's just talk about content. That is, it really is the foundation for everything, for all of the tactics. And the kind of content you should deliver should vary by point of the customer journey. And we had talked about that earlier, but basically it's kind of more general at the top of the funnel, and then it gets more specific as you get towards the bottom of the funnel. And then if you're working on the part of marketing, which is customer retention, then it's even more specific to the needs that you know that your specific clients have. And so it's much like Collateral, which is the different types of content that you would produce. But it's web pages, blogs, social posts, emails, videos, infographics, advertisements, and more. But all of those need to have text, video, or images or graphics. Okay, so does anybody have? So I just have to underline that again, because without content, you don't have any of the other tactics. And so generally speaking, in order to have a viable digital marketing strategy, you need to have a good writer on your team who can write in simple, clear language, because a lot of legal writing is pretty dense. And so it's a very, very different type of writing, even if you are a good writer. And then somebody who's good with images, great to have a graphic designer, and also great to have videography. So this can get a little overwhelming for people, because those are very different skill sets than most lawyers are trained to. So therefore, a solution for that within your business will be needed. How can you really produce exciting, interesting, consumable content? Okay, does anybody have questions about content?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great. So we talked about the objectives, which were your lead measures. And I just wanted to then circle back and talk about the KPIs, which are your key performance indicators, and speak a little bit to what, have your campaigns been successful. And so we brought up Google Analytics, and so you will probably need help with having somebody set up your analytics properly, especially to track conversions. But it's also good just to get a pulse check on, over time, is your marketing resulting in more traffic to your site? Are you getting more engagements on social media? Have you had more opens and clicks on your email? Have you been able to reduce your cost per click on your paid search? So those are the types of KPIs that you would be looking at, and they can go from very general kinds of measures to very specific measures, depending on how deeply you get into your analytics. But some people call those measures that I just described vanity measures. And they do give you a pulse check, but the most important thing are conversions. And so so for each tactic that you have, even if you get a huge load of traffic, and I was talking to a woman today and she was saying that they had been doing Facebook advertising and it did generate a lot of traffic, but that traffic ended up wasting her time because she was getting all these calls from people who had questions about what she did and things like that, but weren't really ready to buy. And so actually just having more traffic isn't necessarily the best measure of success, because what you really want to do is make sure that you get traffic that doesn't waste your time, so quality leads, and can convert into clients. So that's just one point. And then another thing to think about, though, is that in another way, the numbers do matter, especially the ones that are public facing. So people are more impressed if you have 10,000 Twitter followers than if you have 50 Twitter followers. So there's a way in which kind of vanity metrics do affect your brand, but at the end of the day, you'd rather have smaller, higher quality type of audience. And you can see how that even is related to the relationship marketing that so many of you do, because you don't need a lot of friends, you just need really good friends. Does anybody have questions about measuring what matters?
No.
Okay, so then I wanted to just summarize the takeaways that I said that I would give you from the beginning. So we did cover the 3 pillars of marketing, which are brand, strategy, and content. And then we didn't talk as much about navigating crisis and it being an art and a science and poetry. But I do want to end talking about that a little bit, because we're all going to have to kind of get through this a little differently. And so, like, if you were able to start analyzing and your different efforts, then that would be kind of the science part. But kind of the art and poetry part are really staying strong yourself right now and keeping positive and finding out how you can really be a beacon for others and find solutions for them right now. So it may take a little quiet time or soul searching to really say, well, what's happening in my business and where can I really be helping people? Which brings us to how coronavirus is an opportunity, because we're all having to dig so much deeper. And at the end of the day, we may find that after we get through this difficult period, we're all stronger and we all know about how to meet the needs of our audiences in a stronger, more targeted way. And this is a hard thing to say, but at the end of the day, we know that not everybody's going to navigate this successfully. So that, just for example, probably after we get to a certain point through this, there will be fewer restaurants. And so the restaurants that are remaining will have fewer competitors. And so if you can stay strong now and use this as an opportunity to build your business, not at the expense of anyone else, but just to realize that there are lots of ways, large and small, that you can stay in front of your audience. And so that you may find literally that after a very difficult contracting time, that for some people who are able to take themselves up to being more of kind of a positive leadership role instead of a panic role, then at the end of the day, you may find that this has been in some ways, despite all the difficulty, a good thing. So I just offer that in the spirit of business owner to business owner. And then I also wanted to direct you to a few resources we have. And you'll be getting these slides, but we have a Shine Online series. It is for beginners, but it's a 16-part series. So you would sign up for it and get a double opt-in and a thank you note. And then your emails would start coming, and they cover all the topics we covered today, really. But it is for beginners. And then you're also welcome to sign up for a complimentary strategy session if you have deeper questions about any material we've covered. And then I have additional reading for you, and it's from our blog, and it covers the gamut of this and many other specific questions that you might have. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and I am happy to answer questions.
Yes, we have a couple of questions here, and thank you, Anna, for that. We will be sending out all of the resources that Anna just mentioned in an email after the webinar. So first question, what is the best form of advertisement you see as the best investment that has a high conversion rate, especially since if you are someone who has a very limited marketing budget?
Okay, so that last one was the very limited marketing budget. The best form of, and the most highly converting form of advertising is pay-per-click, but it's also the most expensive. So that's kind of a double bind on that question. Least expensive then would be Facebook advertising. Like I said, it has a slow sales cycle and could get sort of some non-qualified leads to you. So you would need a strategy for managing that. So probably it would be better to reach out to me to let me know more about your specific situation. But that's some food for thought.
Mm-hmm. And regarding digital optimization, is it true that platform uses 3 to 5 words?
I don't quite understand that question.
So if you ask that question, if you want to type in and clarify, that would be great.
Do we have another question? Because I can answer that while they're retyping.
Yes. Is Microsoft Ads effective, or should I stay with Google Ads exclusively?
In terms of advertising, you should always test. So actually find out, test both sets of ads and find out which ones yield better conversions and which ones are most cost effective for you.
And for those, and this is happening a lot, like there's a lot of webinars going on. For folks who are putting together a webinar, how do you recommend online advertising for a live webinar to get some real traction? And what's a reasonable budget for that? Like I think LinkedIn is pretty good, is really great for that. So what are your recommendations?
So first of all, they should be sharing the webinar in all of the free places that you can share it. So like across all their social media, not just once, but weekly, basically leading up to it. And then, you know, last chance, 3 days, sign up today type of thing. And then also sharing it in their newsletter. And then another way too, though, is to make sure that it's shared by friends and colleagues. And we actually didn't talk about co-marketing during this, but just for example, for this webinar, we co-marketed. So I also posted on my social media and you posted it on your social media. So we were marketing partners for this event. And so that's a really great way to promote your webinars for a lower cost. And then most of my clients don't get a lot of success with LinkedIn advertising. And so I'm not sure if that was what you were proposing, but you could try LinkedIn advertising. It's usually more expensive and lower yield than something like pay-per-click ads. But Facebook too would be a way, in this case, since you're promoting a specific event, to get your webinar out there with lower cost.
We have clarification on the first question.
Oh,
hopefully
great.
it's clear. Regarding digital optimization about those 3 to 5 words. So this person was referring to key search terms that are limited to 3 to 5 words.
Mm-hmm.
So is it true that platforms uses key search terms that are limited to 3 to 5 words? And if so, how do you separate yourself from competitors?
I'm still not totally sure what that question means, but in search engine optimization, there are things called long tail keywords. And so it is true that keywords that have 3 to 4 keyword phrases that have 3 to 4 elements, something like digital marketing near me or personal injury attorney near me, those convert at a higher rate, because if you just put personal injury attorney or injury attorney, that's a general term and someone may even just be looking for a definition. So if somebody is using phrases that indicate that they want to make some kind of transaction or find something, then that's a better type of word to optimize for. And usually those are longer tail search terms. I think that answers at least part of the question.